Hello and welcome to episode 292 of The Crate and Crowbar. It is the 14th of August 2019. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight joining me is Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
Hi.
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 What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? It's a very gradually moving house, which is a lot of putting Warhammer in boxes.
Are you ashamed of any of the Warhammer because there's so much Warhammer?
That's a pretty loaded question to ask me. A man who's had a sort of plastic crisis that's stretched over the better part of 3 years. No, I feel more shame about a lot of... Actually, I'll tell you what, I feel more shame about the amount of tat the video game industry has loaded onto my life over the course of 8 years. Like, I've made, and I may end up posting in Discord, basically a sort of nerd stuff amnesty pile. Because there's a lot of things that, like, I can imagine someone might want, but there's no way they make any sense as charity shop donations. Like, I have a Firaxis XCOM, like, Vigilo Confido kind of logo badge. And I think some people love XCOM. Someone's going to want that.
There's value.
I feel bad about putting that in my bin bag that I use for everything else. But nonetheless, I don't want this. And
the effort required to make sure it goes to someone who would...
it's several... Like, there's joules of energy involved in me, like, finding a home for it. So you end up just sort of staring at tat, basically. Like,
we must all have a world in conflict hip flask somewhere, or some
right,
similar piece of, like, this is obscure enough that I can't easily find a home for it.
and you feel guilty about binning stuff because presumably there's some recycling value. Like, the other thing is, steelbook collector's editions of PC games, which are the most useless objects on earth because you can't reuse the discs because you would just, even if you wanted to reinstall the game, you would just download it because that would be the most recent version of the game. Yeah. You wouldn't install it from 4 CDs and then update it. Yeah. And the code is, you can't pass on or do anything with. So that's dead to you. So you've just got to really love DVD cases. Really, and sometimes the art on them is quite nice, which is a huge waste of effort from everyone involved. So that has been the greater crisis, to be honest, is just figuring out what to do with all that stuff other than charity shops and recycling bins.
I'm thinking after this, just burn it in the back garden.
There's a big plasticky fire there, Alex.
That's okay. Like, it's a good fire. It's like the black smoke would be a really good symbol for it. The waste, the pointlessness, the guilt. I think that we should lean into it.
Embrace the black smoke.
Right, yeah. I mean, I like Lost as well for a while, but the Warhammer Shames is pronounced. Ask me how I feel about it after the removal men have come and gone.
Pronounce judgment on you.
I mean, I don't think they're going to be in a position to judge. They're just there to move tables.
So why are you throwing away the steelbook? You've got all this plastic men.
Maybe they will want it. But honestly, I may well need to do like some kind of amnesty because I've also got so much Dota stuff that's like...
You can make a suit of armour out of it.
Out of Steelbook collector's editions of Dawn of War games. Maybe. So that's... I don't know. It's eventually everything will go in a box and then leave, which is, I think, my philosophy. But I'm looking forward to this process being done. But it is also a really good opportunity to purge the accreted kind of tat of so many years. It's amazing how much stuff that feels too valuable to bin, even though it has no value
I just wonder how it gets in the house, because every single one of those items had to be carried, like, specifically over the threshold of my house. Like, the house.
I'm going to say it's probably Chris.
But
well, there's two of us in this house.
True. That's true, actually. Yeah, you got two game events
I would say most of the Warhammer stuff was Chris.
Yeah. Although Pip's painting some terrain now, so, and those are big pieces, so... it's not making it easy for ourselves. I mean, like, I think about this because I know, I remember viscerally moments when I used to work for PC Gamer where it'd be like, we gotta get rid of, like, there's this box and it's just a bunch of Dishonored Collector's Edition stuff. Does anyone want it? And you go like, oh yeah, alright. But I mean, the answer to that is always no. Like, even if you momentarily think the object is cool, look at it, touch it then, and then be rid of it, because you will never interact with it ever again. And time only moves in one direction, and the direction that time moves in is the opposite direction to the part of you that needs a Corvo mask, right? Like, that person who needs that is always like 4 years younger than you currently are, and you're racing away from that point.
But the thing is, you might be racing towards a point where you're setting up like a little YouTuber kind of set, like you need all that. Suddenly you need that shit for the background.
Yeah, I could set dress the shit out of some Billy bookcases and record the fuck out of a Let's Play in front of them. But I don't want to. I don't want to. But if anyone is setting up maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the answer. Just reach out to, nascent new media companies, and there's lots of them in this area, and just say, like, do you guys need tat for your wall of tat? Because
yeah, I bet they would.
Yeah, man, maybe
I will shovel it into your.
I would honestly, yeah, I would also accept some kind of buyback scheme, like maybe orchestrated as an agreement between game publishers, like. Just recall this stuff. Maybe once a year at Gamescom, people could just show up with like bin bags full of the stuff and
tat amnesty.
Yeah. Honestly, Gamescom is this is topical. It's like next week or whatever, right? A tat amnesty at Gamescom. People love that. I've seen people lose their minds for Farming Simulator lanyard at Gamescom, right? Like, I tweeted about this, but I'm throwing away bin bags full of lanyards. Do you want to commemorate a Sims 4 press trip from 2014? I don't, but maybe I could whip that overhand into a crowd at Gamescom and make a teenager's day.
Can you conveniently take all of this stuff to Germany?
Not easily. That's the first problem. But, and also it would be technically smuggling, I believe, if they are of any value. Maybe you could just have to make the case that this stuff is of so
say that it's
value.
a gift to Germany and send it to the address, like find like the GPS sort of address of the front doors of Gamescom and have it delivered there, and then write on the little import kind of label, a gift for Germany.
Yeah, maybe I could get like a store mannequin or something, or a big teddy bear or something, like bedeck it in lanyards and then like ship it to Germany on a Eurorail or something, like Paddington, like a kind of Tat Paddington, like with like to be looked after by the first games fan that finds it.
For some reason I'm just picturing like DEA agents ripping open the teddy bear and just finding like hip flasks and weird hats.
Exactly.
We got a case of smuggled tat here, boys.
Yeah, God, like, I mean, sort of,
Class D.
We've got these like boxes of, I think Pip put these back from E3, like Funko Pop Bethesda figures. Ooh. So it's like, do you want
Funko Pop?
I know, and that's saying something. Do you want like a chibi Emily Caldwin? No, you don't. No, you don't. And
the thing is, you're identifying like the very top tier of potential tat, like here. Like, just think about the depths below.
I know.
Chibi.
I got Plants vs. Zombies gardening gloves, but I'm keeping those.
Well, I had those as well. We used them and they're rotting in our shitty shed now.
Yeah, they're rotting in my shitty shed too.
I texted the biggest Bethesda fan I know with a photo of this item and said, do you want this? Because seriously, you can have it. And I got no back, which tells you something. Yeah. It's actually, though, it's kind of a relief. As soon as that stuff's out of the way, I own almost nothing else. I own, like,
just a computer,
Warhammer Men, some clothes,
yeah.
a lot of those clothes are Games Industry shirts. I've had 2 purges of them already because I don't even, I now do go to a gym, but even then I realized when I go to the gym, I'd always assumed that there would come a day where I would go to a gym. That was the first thing I assumed. And that actually did actually come to pass. And I thought, when that happens, I am going to want to wear this APB Reloaded t-shirt.
That's the time.
Yeah, because I will be sweaty, and that is what people do in the gym, and they need to sweat into an object of clothing that they hate. And that's how I understood that it worked. And then I entered this process, and even though it was one-on-one physical training, I would be too embarrassed to wear that. It raises too many questions.
Well, I didn't realize there are other people in the gym.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize that, oh no, I still feel a lot of the same shame I feel outside. And while I accept that I am a sweaty mess, like I can find dignity in small things like wearing a plain tee. And so, so that actually did go to a charity shop, and I'm fascinated by the fate of these items. I really hope.
You want to put a tracking chip in it, really.
I think that's probably unethical. But nonetheless, because the Bath must be full of this stuff. There's so many games journalists here and former games journalists.
But you don't see it much.
You don't, but surely, I don't know, like, I hope if you work in a charity shop, let me know, because I would love to know if this stuff gets bought, because I really hope it does, and if it doesn't, I hope it gets recycled or taken away. Or
one of them must have my oversized dog T-shirt from Half-Life 2.
That seems like I can imagine someone buying that.
Yeah, it was a value, but it was a fucking enormous, like most promotional T-shirts I've got.
Yeah, but like no one's going to go to a charity shop to buy like a War Thunder keyring, are they? Like they're just not.
War Thunder, you say?
Do you want it? Seriously, I'll just have an open house. We should talk about video game
actual games, like
facts,
digital ones.
Yeah, them. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. So it's been a while since you've been on the podcast, Alex.
It has, hasn't it?
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Went up to Scotland.
Oh, right.
There weren't no games for me there.
So you came back.
So I came back. It was really nice. I was going to say, yeah, my son, who is now 14, finished Spelunky while we were out there.
Yeah, I read your piece.
The Vita. Yeah, I wrote a little thing on my blog about it. And I realized, so he first saw Spelunky when it came out as HD back in 2012.
Dang.
And so that's 7 years ago. So he saw it when he was 7. He's played it on and off since then. And now, 7 years later, he beat King Yama and he was really pleased with himself. And it was a really nice moment. And I wrote, I mentioned it, but in the piece I wrote, but we read the thing I'd written about him the first time we saw Spelunky, because I was interested in, he likes open-ended games, and Spelunky was just sort of fit the nexus of what he is interested in at the time. Although he couldn't play it, he wouldn't play it. He was too frightened of the ghost. And so I wrote about it back when he was 7, and then we read it together after he beat Yama, and I was really pleased. I didn't know how he'd react, and he was just like lit up. He was really happy, and he's like, I still really like open-ended games.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Really like it is. Yeah, it's awesome. And he was really.
It must be
really
weird
proud.
to read about yourself on a public blog post from like 7 years ago. Like when how old was he then?
7. Yeah, and then so I said, could I write about it again? And he said, yeah. And he was really pleased with what I wrote. I don't think he understood what I was really getting out with it, which is probably just as well. Because it's, Anyway, that was my gaming for 2 weeks.
Lovely.
It's real nice.
There's going to be like a whole generation of children who grow up, having featured in op-eds about games you can play with one hand while like cradling a baby.
Yeah.
Because there is one of those articles for every child that has been born to a games journalist.
Yes. I kind of feel quite a little bit guilty about that, but then you also know that like there are quite a lot of gaming parents now. Like there's a sort of enough of them that it's almost worth doing it. But it's it is it's a bit of flotsam, because you don't want to talk about your kids. No, nobody wants to hear you talking about their kid. You got kids. Like it's boring, isn't it? Everyone has kids. It's just kids, isn't it?
It's just kids, innit? How are you, Tom?
Alex's review of kids.
7 out of 10.
I am good, thanks. Shall I mention some video game news?
Yeah, that's what excellent idea.
Because there was something I thought was kind of interesting. So Dead Cells has just had a new update, as it does from time to time. But the interesting thing to me was that they had a sort of like, what's the future of Dead Cells bit in their blog post. And the future of Dead Cells is that basically some of the team want to keep working on it, and much of the team want to work on something new, and are working on something new. But they are a workers' co-op where the company is equally owned by every employee. Like everyone has an equal share of the company and the profits. And so obviously that creates kind of an imbalance if some of those people are doing the work on Dead Cells and all the money from Dead Cells is being split equally between everyone, and some people are no longer working on it. So I don't know exactly what the financial arrangement is, but basically they formed a new company so all the people who are working on Dead Cells now have formed a new company called Evil Empire, and that will be the Dead Cells company. And then all the people who work on the new thing are Motion Twin, which is the company that made Dead Cells.
Oh, right. So the old name is going to the new game.
Which struck me as weird at first, and then I thought actually it makes a lot of sense, because the new game will need the name recognition of the developer, because it doesn't have the name recognition of the brand. I assume it's not a Dead Cells game. Well, I don't know that at all. Whereas the people who are making Dead Cells, they don't need any name recognition because they've got the Dead Cells name. But they're all in the same office still. They're still just, working alongside each other. It's just that because they own the company, they need to, make sense to split it up so that the people still making Dead Cells, I assume, get, do you think they get all the profit from Dead Cells from now on? Or?
Presumably the new company, Motion Twin still needs funds to develop the next game though. So presumably Dead Cells funds have gone into that.
Yeah. So
you'd think.
Yeah.
Unless they've got some investment or something.
I mean, they must all be doing pretty well for themselves. I guess I don't know how many of them there are. There are like 200 of them, maybe not. But it did well, Dead Cells. And if they all, I mean, it's a very rare situation where like every employee got equal profit share on this huge hit. Yeah. It's quite cool. But
it's an interesting decision because and calling it Evil Empire as well. So you can imagine like it would definitely, justify resentment.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the thing that was interesting to me about this is that, the idea that employees wanted to keep working on the same thing that they were already working on, which is, and at first I thought that's insane. Like after you finish a game, you're like, oh my God, get this out of my sight. I never want to see it again, after an appropriate period of updating it. But of course, if you co-own the company, then the financial incentive is part of your decision-making process too. Whereas like if you're at Ubisoft and you just released the thing you worked on for 4 years and killed yourself to get out, I would imagine there are fewer people or a smaller percentage of people there, wanting to keep working on the same thing because they don't profit from that. But when you have this big mega selling game that's, continuing to do well, workers are actually going to make the decision to keep working on it for, both creative and financial reasons.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like it'd be interesting to see if it hurts either project at all. Like, if because the other thing I would sort of want to understand how it works is if it's based entirely on what people want to do, how do you have balanced teams? Like if an equal number of programmers want to do completely different things, that's great. But presumably you do need both sets of expertise on both projects, right? Yeah. Or at different times as well. Like, if they're presumably they're going to have artists and, concept artists and so on. And those people are presumably going to be more useful on pre-production on next project than they would be on Dead Cells updates, you'd assume. But nonetheless, you know what I mean? It feels like, a strange thing to leave to chance, but that has always been the Valve conundrum as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of good in that there's usually a sort of, the people who are most useful on a completely finished and released game that now needs some more content are not the people most useful at the very start of a project where it's still in conceptual stages. They said they're still figuring out, what it even is. And, so it's very, early. And there are just some jobs. I don't know how big they are. I've been picturing sort of like 10, 15 people.
That was my impression.
Like the much bigger studios, where you get to like 50 to 100 people, you've got people who just would have nothing to do at the start of a project. You're, if you're doing like
marketers and so on.
Yeah, yes. And just like the kinds of, things you do on a project that's finished are very different to the kinds of things you do on a project that starts. And if your team's big enough, some of those people just have jobs that are dedicated to one or the other of those roles, which is, that's also the cause of these mass layoffs that happen. Or, what's the word? Like cyclic layoffs or
cyclically? I don't know.
Anyway, big companies that regularly lay off their staff after a game release because if you don't have enough projects to move those people onto, you don't need them for anything. So, it gets to be a bad situation.
I'm interested to know if one of the reasons for the company making the new game to retain the old name is if it makes sense that, I don't know, if Evil Empire sort of crank out a Dead Cells expansion or two, and by the time that's all done, new game is actually ramping up into production, does that company then fold and everyone gets hired back into Motion Twin? If you know what I mean? Like, would this be like, make sense as a temporary thing?
And I wonder, if they, because it'd be weird to sort of join late in the project and then still get equal rev share from the whole thing.
Right. But it would also be weird if they then started making their own game after Dead Cells, because then you got yourself two companies.
I'm guessing that won't happen because I think they're still sort of, notionally intending to be, they still want to work together. They're still, there wasn't like a big falling out or anything and they didn't have creative differences and decide to, they couldn't collaborate. It's just that, it does make sense to keep developing a thing once it's successful. And some of the people want to do that more than others, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Shall we talk about a game, what we all play that came out this week?
Yeah.
Dicey Dungeons?
Yeah, Dicey Dungeons. And so we need to put a caveat at the front of Dicey Dungeons. Dicey Dungeons is Terry Kavanagh's new game, with Holly Grazio and a team of other kind of people who have contributed to it. One of those people is the Great and Crowbar Zone, Philippa War.
Yeah.
Who was the script editor for all of the writing in the game. So I say that partly as a hooray for Pip kind of thing. I think this is Pip's first game credit, so that's cool. But also as a caveat that, or a disclaimer that we obviously do know someone who worked on this game because she lives in this house and were she not out for Wings Wednesday today, she may even have been on this podcast. So, that caveat notwithstanding, we should talk about Dicey Dungeons because I think we'd all played early versions of this, but we should probably reapproach it from scratch.
Yeah, so it's a roguelike game in which you play, you pick a class, and each class is a dice, but also you roll dice. And then you have equipment that requires certain values of dice. And so you roll like 3 dice, and then you've got one bit of equipment that like does 3 damage, but you have to put an even dice into it, to trigger that. And one that just, whatever the value of the dice is, it does that much damage. And each of those things can only be used once per turn. And so it's kind of about strategically figuring out how to use the dice you've got. Most classes have some way to re-roll the dice that aren't useful to them or do something else with them. Sometimes you'll just have, as you progress through the game and go through like different, it's mostly just a series of fights, kind of like Slay the Spire, and treasure chests that give you new equipment. And as you get new equipment, you'll find things like ones where it's just, something that does 20 damage, but you've got to put 15 points into it total, and you can just put any dice into it. And once you've put 15 total and it carries over to your next turn, you can spend multiple turns investing in that. And so it's funny how much it feels like Slay the Spire, given that it's not cards. It's not even a deck builder. It's not, you build a loadout of equipment, but only in the same way you do in an RPG. It's not like a deck thing. But rolling dice and, basically when you roll a set of dice, you will have values that suit certain bits of equipment that in your loadout and not others. And that's a bit like drawing a hand of cards from a deck of possible options. So you always have some subset of all your possible tools are valid for this turn. And it's it's a lot simpler because there's just fewer things to think about. You usually only have sort of like 4 different abilities maybe in your whole, arsenal. And it's pretty clear once you learn the basics how all those dice things work. And then there's just a lot of tricksiness about, like if you have a power, I think as the warrior I had, so the warrior is the most basic class. It's mostly about just dealing damage, but also, has some items that build up shield. So one of their items is a spike shield. A spike shield, if you put an odd value dice into it, it deals that much damage. If you put an even value dice into it, it gives you that much defense.
Yeah.
So it'll block on the enemy's turn. The whole thing, so the thing that's new to me actually is, because I played an alpha version quite a long time ago, and now that it's out, it is themed as a game show, which took me by surprise. I didn't know that. Because when I last played it, it was just a dungeon, and now it's a game show about dungeons run by Lady Luck, and there's a sort of running joke about the evils of luck and the and being on the losing end of it. And so you play as, once I don't actually know, I completed it. So I had a good streak, and I don't know if this is because I knew the game already or if I just got lucky or if it got easier, but, playing as the warrior, then the thief, then the robot. And then the inventor. I won every time on my first try.
Oh, wow.
And then I got to the witch. And I did not win as the witch. And I thought I made some, like, I messed up 2 different things. I sort of missed, a health pickup on a level I'd already cleared. I just forgot to pick it up before I went to the next level, and you can't go back. And I was like actually quite badly hurt, so I needed that. And then in the next fight, I fought a loud bird was the enemy type, which is fucking terrifying. It can silence you, which just prevents.
Oh, that's fairly bad for the witch.
I think it's like, I don't know what the metaphor is there, but like the loud bird. I mean, if it deafened you, that make a lot of sense. I guess it's so loud you can't get a word in.
Your incantations cannot be heard.
Yeah. But that means you have to put in 2 dice just to get back your basic functionality to do almost anything. And then it was also, I can't remember what else it was doing. It was doing something really nasty to me every turn. And I was there was this little, icon in the top left hand corner that I experimentally clicked, which turns out is the flea icon, and it does so with no further confirmation. And that means they get in another round of free attacks on you. And this was not, I mean, it would have almost been worth it if there was some like health pickup that I could have gone for, or some easier opponent I could have gone for, but this is just the start of the level. This is the only thing I could do. So all I could do is just go back and fight the loud bird again, but now with much less health. And I got completely destroyed, and I thought, oh, that's so annoying. I broke my streak because I made a few stupid mistakes. And then I played as the witch 2 more times. No, the witch is just fucking hard. The witch is brutally difficult. So the witch, so the warrior and then the thief is just like the warrior, but they have a lot of low value, like abilities.
They
that
also
require...
gain an ability from opponents, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. So they have low value, equipment that requires low value dice, and then ways to go duplicate those dice and get a lot of low value dice, split high value dice into smaller value dice and all that stuff. And then, as you say, that they steal a random ability of the opponent each turn, and you can use that against them, which is cool. But it's, for the most part, it's kind of just different equipment and the same mechanics. And then, the robot, you don't have a fixed number of dice. You have a kind of bar, and every time you roll a new dice, it adds to that total. And if you max it out, if you go over your limit, it crashes, and then all your abilities turn off and you can't use them.
So it's like this sort of, you want as many dice as you can, but you don't want to roll so many that you go over your limit. Cause
it's kind of like blackjack.
Blackjack,
And
I really like the robot.
The robot's probably my favorite, actually. There's the ability I got when I played with the robot that I had a choice, and it was like a level up choice. I think these are fixed. And one of the options was a ability that just does however much damage, that's the value of the dice you put into it, and it doesn't turn off when you overload. And so, like, okay, I'll take that, and now I'll just overload myself every single turn, because there's no, like, I'll use before I play the last risky dice, I'll use all the dice I have on the abilities that will turn off, and then I might as well just keep rolling till I either overload, or if you hit the exact right amount, you get jackpot, and that gives you a bunch of free abilities that you can use. And so that was just radically better than, I can't remember what the other thing was, but I can't imagine it was anything like as good. And then you can upgrade it so it does that value plus 2. And so every round I'm just getting that almost for free. And then the inventor, the equipment that they use at the end of every fight, they have to dismantle one piece of equipment they brought into the fight, which is kind of a big deal because these are your permanent, they can be permanent, abilities that you take through the whole game if you like them. But the inventor must destroy one of them at the end of every single fight, and there are loads of fights. But when they do so, they turn it into a sort of free ability that will often be a lesser version of the thing that it was. So if it was a sword that did X damage, now it's a plasma gun that does 5 damage for free every turn you click it. So for that fight, it's a free thing you use every turn, which is kind of good. It's usually a bit less dramatic than a full ability, but it's free, so that's cool. But that is just changing. And so you can never get used to your build. You never settle into like, oh, here's what my run is. It's all about this. Every fight, you lost the ability that shaped that whole last fight, and now you've got a different one. Now I'm healing myself every turn, or now I'm doing something else, which is kind of cool. I think the balance is just about right now. I seem to remember having problems with this class when I played an alpha, and I didn't this time. And there were a couple of things where I was just like, I'm never breaking this down. I'm keeping this bit of equipment. It's really good. It supports my build. And then everything else, every other bit of junk I find, I'll just slot into my spare slots and break it down at the end of the fight, and I'll just get whatever I get. And then the witch is, you have to roll. She has a spell book, and, at first, the only things in it are, an ability on 1 and an ability on 2, but there are slots for every value a dice can have. And if you roll a 1 or a 2, you put it into your spellbook, and that lets you slot that ability into one of your 4 slots. So it's like you're sort of creating your equipment on the fly from a list of 6 things that you bring with you. And when you start, because there's only 2 in there, if you roll anything that isn't a 1 or a 2, you can't really do anything with it, except that one of the thing that's on your 1 slot is a cauldron that can re-roll a dice and do damage, but only once per turn. And so it's complicated, and I think it's both more dependent on your decision making, and it's very easy to screw yourself, and it's more luck based, I think, because you're always going to have some good abilities and some bad abilities in that roster of 6. And if you just don't roll that value, you just can't have that ability this fight. And so,
particularly as there are some creatures that are kind of elemental, and therefore you kind of want electricity or whatever it's called.
And so the thing I remembered from previously was that, I remembered it being kind of good, because the thing that's confusing about it is, like, if you have an ability that, say, it requires a 4 to trigger, that might not be in the 4 slot in your spellbook. You might put it in the 5 slot. And so now it's a thing where you got to remember, I need to roll a 5 to get that ability, but then once I have it, 5s are no good to me. I only need 4s, or it's an odd number and it needs evens. And I always feel like I've done it wrong both ways, because if it's like, I had a really good ability that takes evens and I put it in my 4 slot, and then afterwards I thought, this is dumb because I used up one of my evens to get the ability, and now I don't have it left to use it to power the ability. But then I think that's actually a fallacy. I don't think that, it's not like you're more likely to get a bunch of, more likely to get different values on your dice. You're just as likely to get all evens as you are to get a mix of evens and odds. Actually, that's not strictly true, but there's just a lot to get your head around. And then now I think actually you do want to put you actually kind of want to specialize in evens or odds, because you end up getting some abilities that can push your whole build in that direction. So I eventually found a version of that cauldron that re-rolls your dice, that will always re-roll it to an even value. And there's another one that always re-rolls it to an odd value. So you can just choose which one you want more of. And then there's another one that doubles a value of the dice, which of course is always going to leave you with an even value. And so if you had both of those, you'd have a lot of different ways of making even value things, and therefore you want both abilities that trigger on even dice, and also to put them in even numbered slots in your spellbook so that you can spend even dice to slot them, and then also spend even dice to play them. And that's taken me like 3 runs to get as far as thinking, oh, I probably want to do that, and I failed every time. I
think that's kind of what's right about it, though. Like, the thing I really like about it, so I've only beaten it with the warrior and the thief so far, but the thing I really like is that it is about figuring out how to create an engine for giving you the results you want. Like, I'd say the spy is a really obvious comparison, but I think it has a sort of, partly for a bunch of reasons, including the fact that it's just a big sandbox full of rules, basically, from its enemies to its classes and things. It's just an opportunity to create lots of different, ways of interacting with this dice system.
Yeah.
But the other comparison I would make is, like a deck building game or a set building game, it has a sort of engine creation aspect to it. I wouldn't say necessarily in a fully like Zachtronics-y way, but I think a lot of the logic of it is, I have these results, how do I turn them into the results I actually want? And some of those are decisions that you make before a fight based on the equipment you choose, and some of those are decisions you can actually kind of make on the fly if you see a particular opportunity. And it is really satisfying to like my first victorious run was as the warrior with a gun and a hammer, and the six shooter, which shoots 6s. So they did which you can keep activating as long as you've got 6s, basically. And so trying to understand the dice, and then coupling of that with an item that I believe is called the Midnight Charm, which, if you, get it to add up, if you feed it enough things to add up to 10, then it spits out 3 6s, I think. The number of the beast. And then you can upgrade that so it only requires a 5. And then that creates this really interesting loop where, you need to feed it a 5, but if you roll a 5 and you also have a bump, which allows you to increase the value of a dice by 1, then you kind of, there's no point with that. So you create a lot, basically like, maybe I'm explaining this badly, but you create like a a possibility space where you can make use of almost every result in an interesting way. So it's like, if you have 2 5s, it makes sense to bump one up to a 6 and feed one of them into artifact in order to spit out more 6s that you then feed into the gun to do damage. But if you have lower numbers, then some of them are worth re-rolling, but also some of them are worth maybe combining to get that 5 total and use your dice in a different way. And then with the thief as well, it built entirely about the dagger, which is the initial weapon, which can only take 3s or under, but you can use it as many times as you like in a turn. So you can do playstyles with the thief that are all about poison or all about completely different weapons, but the upgraded dagger does the value of the dice +1, so it can do 4 damage a go. And so created a factory for making 3s, with a lot of different kind of parts to it, like duplicating dice, but also there's a once per game item that means that you feed it a result, and then on the next turn you're guaranteed to get 2 dice, two dice showing that result. And then there's another item, which is, I think, the grappling hook, which means that the next item you use can be used twice this turn. And that applies even on things that are worth a once per battle. So you can use that to guarantee 4 3s on the next thing and then feed them into the duplication thing while activating the grapple again. And you end up with some nuts kind of huge pile of 3s out of 4 initial dice. And it feels really satisfying to pull that off and then do, 40 damage or something in a single turn, just through this particular engine. And that's
definitely
one
got that
build.
Slay the Spire sort of sense of kind of like, I've been dealt these dice, I've rolled these dice or been dealt these cards, and I'm going to figure out how to make best use of them. Like, it's really, really satisfying.
To me, it feels like with the Witch anyway, I think that's what I'm missing with the Witch is that, well, you have loads of creativity or like choice over how you build your spell book. But so far, every time I played, the first 6 spells I get are the same 6 spells. And so it's just a question of which slots I put them in. And that matters a little bit, but I'm usually like nearly dead by the time I've got that 6 spells slotted. And then the leveling up beyond that is unexplored territory. But yeah, with the Inventor, I had a really nice loadout where I had a flamethrower, which has 2 slots, and you just put any dice you like in it, and it does that total damage as fire damage, plus it burns one of their dice, but you can only use it once per battle. And then I was fighting, I think, the Wicker Man, who is understandably vulnerable to fire. And I also had, my special ability for that round was a thing that could double the next attack I did. Actually, no, the one special ability, it was just another piece of equipment, because it required dice to fuel it. My special ability was to clone all of my dice, which is amazing. Apart from anything else, you just have twice as many dice. And then the Inventor's, what's it called? Limit break, power. Each class is a different one. Theirs is to turn all their dice to 6s. And so I doubled all my dice. So I had at least 6 of them, I think, turned them all into 6s, used that to fuel the next attack doubler, and then put 2 6s into the flamethrower, which you can usually only use once per battle, but then and is weak to fire, and so it does 12 damage plus whatever the bonus is for them being weak to it twice, and sets them afire, and it just killed them all in one turn.
Yeah, that's just red.
There's another. I haven't played it for a little while now, but I have played it since it turned into a game show. But I remember that one of the things I feel really satisfied about is that it's not all about just getting high numbers. It's about getting a range of them. So you don't get that disappointment where you kind of roll a load of 1s, because sometimes 1s are the best. That's what I'm looking for. And there's lots of opportunities to, like you mentioned, bump. Like you can bump the value up and down depending on with certain abilities. And I like the variety. There's something really massively satisfying about the fact that you're not only looking for one outcome if you were asked to only look for high results, that is functionally the same as looking for like some high, some low, results which you actually get in Dicey Dungeons. But the fact it just tickles your brain, it feels nice not to only expect a certain set of outcomes or want a certain set of outcomes. If
you get the spatula, you can turn a dice over, so you get the value that would be on the other face.
Nice.
So I had to sit there thinking for a while, how are dice set up? And the only I
what
just
is the
inferred, well, from the fact that this is a rule, they tell you this without explanation, I infer there must be a logical way to figure it out, and therefore it's probably that they always sum to 7. Like, there's 1 is on the opposite side of the 6, the 3 is on the opposite side of the 4, the 5 is on the opposite side of the 2.
It's always up to 7. You're the dice man.
That is the case, I believe.
Right.
So you could turn your 1s to 6s with that.
Yeah. And the thing that's nice about it is, I think one of the reasons to design the equipment and all the different abilities, and this is true for enemy abilities as well, is so elegant is, well, it's not just that it's elegant, it's that it creates lots of space, a design space in which it can be elegant. So, and that creates lots of, you have, it isn't just, as you say, high number good, but it's also, what is possible is also based on everything else you've got in a really interesting way. So it's like,
it's
something
combination.
So some things do, the value on the dice plus or whatever an amount as damage. Other things have a flat effect. So like the warrior's armor gaining abilities tend to give you, defense based on the value of the dice you use. So it's encouraging you to want those sort of big results with maybe some other requirements. Whereas like the thief's leather armor gives you like flat 1 damage mitigation, and it just requires, I believe, an odd numbered dice. And that's really interesting. Even though it sounds really simple, it's really interesting because 1, that's a great use of 1s. Because it's like the bonus isn't going to change. You just need to discard the thing that's least valuable to you. But obviously because the rogue tends to attack with low numbered dice, thief, you might have a 5 that you really can't do anything with. And the best thing to do is now to feed into the armor, even though with a different class, a 5 would maybe be something completely different.
Yeah.
And that's like, there are plenty of cases, but that's been achieved without losing, the feeling of a good roll, which I think is a really important part of a dice game. Like, it's good at mitigating the potential swinginess or unfairness of a dice game by giving you lots of different options and ways of, strategizing around any roll you get. But it still feels amazing to have the right dice at the right time, or like when if a fight is a bit close to the wire and it is a roguelike and you are going to lose your progress if it ends, to then get whatever a perfect roll means for your build feels great. And so that's sort of not been lost in this, I guess, dice manipulation engine building sim, which is what it really is.
This applies to your enemies too. Like, they need certain dice to feel their abilities.
And you watch them go, you
can you can just look at what their abilities are and what they require and everything. And
you see their roll.
There's sometimes, disadvantages. So you can freeze dice. That's one of the, if you do ice damage, or if you do freeze to somebody, it puts ice on their dice and, that turns those values to 1. Which, as we've established, is not always a bad thing. Like, if you're a rogue, or a thief, let's just call that rogue. It's not that bad at all. And there's actually an enemy who can only use 1s. The paper knight, every ability he has can only take 1s. And so if you're fighting...
Is it the sniffly porcupine?
Oh, maybe.
The paper,
the porcupine, yeah, it's ones,
the paper knight is the ones that has 2 abilities, 1 is odds and 1 is evens.
Oh, right.
And all that stuff gets worse over time. The sniffly porcupine is the one that can use 1s.
And so if you freeze the sniffly porcupine, you've just given them an advantage, because now they have 1s, which is actually exactly what they need.
True to life. But it's already got a cold. See, it makes sense. On that note, actually, I want to give it, I think the presentation's really lovely. And I think actually this sort of the mad game show thing, the fact that it doesn't really have a theme, so it has space marines and, goblins and handymen and a fireman who's just a man that's on fire.
I love the singer who, when you attack her, just goes, ow!
Yeah, exactly. And the sound's really good. Like, it's not voice acted, but they got voice actors to make, I think we talked about this. What was it? Mechanicus we were talking about. Like, this is as the Animal Crossing method for voicing games, where you don't record voice acting, you just go like and put whatever people do to that. It's actually perfect. Like, I genuinely think this might be superior to voice acting in a lot of cases, because it's very evocative. The music's really good. It's really fun. Like, it's quite a fun.
It's a fun roguelike.
It's a fun roguelike, which is, I love Dead Cells' art, for example, and I like Slay the Spire's aesthetic, if not the art particularly, to be honest. But both of those things are relatively serious, and this is so kind of breezy, and it helps that runs are quite manageable as well.
Yeah, quite short.
They're not very long. You just sort of, you can lose, but you don't lose a lot, and you'll hit the level cap pretty easily, to be honest, if you just do everything, and then there's a boss and you're done with it. It's kind of, it's pleasing to play something that sort of opens up quite as quickly as it does. Although obviously I think maybe some concerns about its longevity on the basis that it doesn't necessarily hold you back.
So I've unlocked episodes now, which I think are its attempt to solve that, which is for every class, each class has 6 episodes, and an episode is a run of the game with some special rules. And so one I played with the inventor was that you don't have to break down a piece of equipment at the end of the round, but all of your equipment can be reused multiple times per turn. But once it's been used 4 times, it's destroyed and turned into ability right then and there.
Right.
So that's very different. It's now just more than ever, you want to just hoard a whole load of possibly trashy equipment, and then you might even want to intentionally overuse the thing just to break it down into an ability because you want to change your ability. And in fact, if you can do that in your turn, you can use the free ability you have this turn, then break a piece of equipment, turns it into a new ability, and that comes sort of pre-refreshed, so you can use that as well. So you end up using 2 of them. So that's kind of interesting and creates a new strategy. Another one I tried was for the robot, which I didn't see anything interesting about it, but it was, so instead of the heat bar where you're trying not to overload yourself, you just get to pick any dice in any quantity as much as you like, but there's a 50-50 chance for all of them that when you roll them, it will crash all your equipment and end your turn, or the roll won't count and it crashes a piece of equipment. And it didn't really lead to any interesting decisions because the chance is the same no matter what you do. Like, it's not like rolling high ones have a higher chance or anything. Or if you get cursed in the game, that's the thing where there's a 50% chance your next attack will misfire. And so that leads to an interesting decision because you think, okay, let's use my weakest attack I don't care about. Let's use some junk dice in this thing that's not going to do much damage. And that will be the one that may misfire. It might not because there's only a 50-50 chance, but you want to do your attacks in like least important first order. But it's always 50-50. And so I guess I'll just play as best I can, always do the same thing every time because I can add whatever dice I like. I can always get the ideal dice for the thing I'm doing. Yeah. So the chance element is gone, and I'm also not really making any decisions. So that one was kind of weird. So those are the only 2 I've tried so far. So far a mixed bag. But I think it's a good idea to have these kind of mutators to mix up the runs.
And then presumably there's 6 times, is it 6 characters total as well?
Yeah, so 36 of them.
So 36 runs. And then, but it doesn't look like it's set up for dailies or additional challenge runs. But I suppose it could be easily.
Yeah, it feels like a potentially good fit.
Should be, they should be able to unlock dice, like unlock a 6.
We've already got the 6, sure.
8-sided dice. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I really like it. Like I'm easily become a.
I'm very happy for Terry because this is it's been 7 years since Super Hexagon, and he's made.
Jesus Christ!
Goodness me.
Yep. Speaking of 2012.
Oh god.
Wow.
Oh no.
And he's made a whole load of stuff since then. I think he wrote about them in his blog just before launch. And I think he said he'd had 4 projects that sort of he started and didn't work out, and 2 that he did finish and release, but as free games. One of which is a sort of roguelike heist game that's quite interesting.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it hasn't been like 7 years of like him taking a nice long break after his success with Super Hexagon and VVV. He has been making new stuff. It just had a string of things that didn't work out, and this one finally has, and he's really proud of it. And it's sold really well too, so that's really nice.
Yeah, it's great. What have you been playing, Alex?
I'm going back to the roguelike, I'm afraid. It was a very different tone. I've been playing Jupiter Hell, which is basically Doom RL, so Doom roguelike. I don't know when it started up. I didn't play it, so
was it a phone game?
No.
There was
that
a phone
was Doom
game.
RPG.
Yeah,
that was an official id made, or at least id sanctioned.
That was pretty good.
Somewhat, yeah. It was like a dungeon master game, wasn't it? Like a little flick dungeon-y game, but with so this is a roguelike. So top down. The Doom RL used Doom graphics, or at least they look like Doom graphics. So sort of 2D on a grid style thing. Jupiter Hell, which sort of for reasons of IP has now shorn itself of all of the Doom paraphernalia, like or direct paraphernalia, and is set on Jupiter, not Mars. So like we're a mile off already.
But still hell.
Yeah. Is 3D and like nice 3D as well, like with physics systems and things, despite still being a turn-based RPG, sort of roguelike RPG. But basically you're playing Doom, in turn-based Doom. And I didn't play, Doom RL, so I'm sure people have, so I might sound a little bit naive in, talking about it, but, I find it quite interesting for a roguelike because I'm not used to playing roguelikes with ranged weapons. Like usually it's like all about melee, like generally about melee with a few magic-y things on top, but mostly you're bumping up against stuff and, it's all
like
about
turn-based
position.
in the rogue-like sense.
Yeah, roguelike.
Rogue-like.
It's like,
Is this a roguelike Doom clone?
It's like, to go to the basics, like this is quite trad, as in it's on a grid, so you move up, down, left and right, and every time you move, well actually no, it's not the case that every time you move, and this is a weird thing about it, but I'll talk about like the feel, the reason why this feel is different first. Like it's all about range, because obviously you're shooting guns, like your pistols and shotguns and SMGs and automatic rifles and rockets and whatever. So like it's very doomy in that way, and to attack, like it's all keyboard. So you're using cursors to move, and then you press F to fire. And it will basically select somebody for you, but you just press tab and it will switch between targets, and it will tell you the, hit percentage you've got on those targets. Your weapons will have different, accuracy sort of bonuses depending on range. So your shotgun is very, very, accurate and does most damage up close, obviously, and, comes off, like quite sharply over distance. So you're kind of juggling all those kinds of things, and you're moving around, and it's fast, like, as in, like, sort of, I've been playing a little bit of Brogue recently, and that is fast in the sense that you're moving around quite quickly because the density of enemies is quite low in that game. So you're kind of skipping around quite fast, but the action when you come to it is like you're generally going slower, and you're usually being quite careful, looking at your health and making decisions. This is fast. You're just hammering F, like bam, 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 right, move behind cover, bam, bam.
And its time goes when you do a thing, right?
No. So like the time thing is, so yes, it is, but it's not purely turn-based. There is invisibly like a timeline system. So your actions take certain amounts of time, and you only gain a sense of that like with experience. And I don't really have that yet.
So like, is it as simple as a shot takes 2 action points and a movement takes 1 action point, or is it more?
Maybe. Like, so your experience of it is that sometimes you'll move and enemies won't. And sometimes you'll move, an enemy will skip 2.
Oh my God.
And I am starting to get a sense of it. And it's interesting because you do get a sense of you got quite a wide spectrum of differentiation in your weapons and kind of other aspects of management of yourself, but also in the enemy. So like imps, or imps will tend to move 2 more often than grunts. Like, like the sort of Marines, like the zombie Marines. And because they are faster, like there are imps that are only melee, and there are imps that shoot fireballs as well. So like they will move faster, and they're a bit more frightening about, them getting close to you. And I would be really irritated about the fact that you don't know how far away something is, or like what something will do to you, like in the time for you to move. But actually it makes your decisions in the moment more interesting, and it feels more dynamic. Okay. So your weapons, so the things you're thinking about in terms of time, switching weapons takes some time. Firing a weapon takes some time. the different weapons take different amounts of time to fire. Chain gun takes fucking ages to fire. A shotgun will always need reloading after shooting. This is all single shot thing. So like, I don't think it takes much time to fire, but you've also got to factor in reload. SMG is fast to fire, I think, and so on. Like, pistols fast to fire, but also fast to switch to from another weapon. Is
your switching time based on the weapon you're switching to, or the weapon you're switching from, or
switching
both?
to, I think. I think you're switching to. So like, I think you can be on chain gun and you can quickly
that's cool.
change to your
that makes
pistol.
Sense.
Again, like, none of this is shown to you. You can only get a sense of it, like, from playing. Like, so there's definitely a problem for new players. And I found it weird.
It's early access, isn't it?
Well, I think so. So it was in Kickstarter a while ago, and I think it's in. I'll talk about kind of what's in it in a second, because there's another thing. There's a cover system in it as well. So when you see an enemy, sometimes it's best to retreat rather than fire at them. And it
doesn't sound very Doom.
there are two systems going on there. First is that, like, you're going to be exposing yourself to fire. Like, your shots may or may not kill them the first time round. Like, you do get an easy sense of what you'll do to them. And most shots will, like, your pistol will take 2 shots, for instance, to kill something. Whereas, like, sort of like your auto rifle will probably take them down. But if there are 2 enemies around, you're probably going to want to retreat to cover. And it's quite like it's nicely shown, like when you retreat behind cover, you'll have like a little, green line on the cover that you're facing, like, or in between you and the enemy that you're currently targeting to show you that you're in cover. And the reason you kind of don't want to get hit is not only because you'll lose health, because, and that's like obviously a bad thing to get, but also because when you get hit, you get a pain counter that goes up. And when you have pain, your accuracy plummets. And like, the pain thing lasts a few turns to go away. And there are ways to mitigate it, but basically getting hit can really fuck you up. Like, you need to think about positioning a lot, like to reduce your chances of getting hit as much as you can. And like, it's not only about health. So there are 3 classes in the game at the moment. There's a Marine, there is a Scout, I think is a Scout, and it's called, like, a Technician, I think it's called. The Marine has a thing called Stim, and Stims you can use once in a level, and it will take away all your pain, and it will give you a very small health boost. So, like, it's a sort of used thing. The Technician gets to put down smoke once thing, and it completely blocks all line of sight. So it's a way of escaping. And the Scout can go invisible for a few turns. And I haven't really played with them too much. I've been mostly on Marine.
I like how they're like, painkiller, smoke grenade, invisibility.
Yeah.
One of them's just a fucking
But the invisibility,
magician.
I'm not sure you can see. I'm not sure you can pop it while you're in combat.
Right.
Or at least you can, but I think you can still be seen, if you sort of mean. I think it's more about getting to a good position when haven't been seen yet. And then, but they're like, their bonuses kind of are interesting for the fact that, like, the Scout gives lots more upgrades that increase sort of time, like, reduce time for stuff. So you're kind of much more nimble, and, like, and I also, and I've only probably done about 15 goes so far. It's interesting. The longer runs I've had have taken quite a long time. There's a lot of, like, action that happens in a run, and I couldn't tell you how close I was to the end. And there are multiple ways through there. You're basically aiming for an elevator on a level, and sometimes there are 2 elevators, and it will tell you where they go to, and where they go to will be themed style of levels. And it's quite interesting. It's captured some of the old Doom feel to levels, so that they're quite tricksy, and, like, the way that it generates them is they feel quite different. So there are some levels where, like, it makes this incredibly symmetrical kind of layouts with sort of symmetrical rooms and kind of patterns of rooms and things feel very sort of old doomy. Like it feels quite nice. And, you know, they're all quite interesting for having pillars in the way and kind of long corridors and things, which all sort of enforce different ways of playing. But yeah, like the level, like it takes a while to go through. And what's I found quite interesting is that I haven't found an item to fill up one of my slots on my character yet. There's like an equipment one, and so I found one item which says that it's a teleporter, and I don't know whether it's a single use thing. Like the blurbs on them are fucking rubbish. Like you look at the descriptions and like in the inventory, it just doesn't tell you. Like, is this a single use thing? Is this like a thing that I slot into a place? I don't know. Like, so that may have been an equipment thing, but I've only found one of them. But yeah, I don't know. But despite the fact that there are quite a wide variety of environments that I've been through, so I've been through mines and sort of bases and there was one level where as I was going through, these demons would spawn, like the sort of hexes appeared and a demon would spawn, and luckily I had good enough weaponry to sort of deal with them. There's upgrade, like mod kits that you can put into weapons. You'll find drops that have already been modded up, and they're kind of rares and epics sort of level star ones. There's loads of stuff going on there, and there's a lot of sort of weird rules about timeliney stuff. But I haven't found the meat of it yet. Like Brogue, you get a sense of a coherent world. Like, you know, obviously there's just like its own physics system going on, and you'll fall through places, and there's sort of, you know, if there's gas in an area and you throw a thing in, and then there's sort of cause and effect going on, and the different creatures are very, very, you know, have very different behaviors and things. In this one, they all just run at you and quite try to kill you. Like, and there's you know, some of them shoot gun things and others try to hit you, and there isn't really a very wide range of things they do to you. Even the weapons they fire at you, like you see a grunt and they might have a shotgun, they might have like a pistol, they might have like a 44 sort of Magnum style thing. Like it's functionally, they'll hit you more or they'll hit you less. And there's no choice going on. You'll just have to shoot them back, you know? Whereas like in Brogue, you can try to disengage and survive. You know, you'll have to think your way through this stuff. And there's thinking in the moment. And weirdly, that actually does capture the Doom thing. Like, you know, if you were going to make a roguelike of Doom, you'd have to make it momentary, on the moment basis, you know, where you're kind of thinking about the next move you do, and like you want to be tapping the kind of cursor keys fast. And like you do move, and it's got a nice sense of movement as you move around. Like if you're really pressing the buttons fast, like it manages to sort of make you go diagonal to make it look like you're turning corners, even though it's totally, you know, it's only left, up, right, up, down. But ultimately the fact it doesn't, I don't know how you build it out, you know, through this is an old game. Like, there's a lot of work that's gone into it over a long period. Is
it the same developers as Doom RL?
Yeah, right. It is.
So this is them going legit, kind of.
Basically them going legit. They're now, like, Doom RL is a freeware game because you couldn't sell it. And so, yeah, this is their kind of, you know, being able to sell a game.
I shouldn't imply that fan works are not legit. Yeah. Them going commercial is what I mean.
Yeah. I believe that John Carmack donated to their
Oh, really?
Kickstarter,
Oh, that's nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think sort of making a roguelike which behaves like a sort of a trigger happy, very fast paced shooter is an interesting design kind of project, but I don't know how long it lasts this game lasts as like, you know, whether you can go back to it over and over again like you can something like Brogue.
I think I'd like to propose a roguelike classification system where the number of rogues you get in the name is how formally similar you are to rogue. Like, is it turn-based? Is it ASCII-based? Do you move into people to hurt them? That's how many rogues you get. So like brogue has like, it's rogue. And then how many likes you get is how many modernizations and conveniences you have. So brogue actually has quite a few. So it's like rogue, like. Spelunky is a rogue like, because it's not that much like rogue, but it does have a lot of modern conveniences. And then you could
I
have
like the system a lot.
It's 2 independent axes that you can vary on.
Right. But so
Dicey Dungeons would be
only one rogue for sure, because it's not ASCII based. It's turn based, I suppose. Yeah, maybe that gets you 2 rogues if you're turn based, but then it's not like free movement on a grid. So probably just 1 rogue, and then a lot of likes, because it's very modern, very slick, very nice to play. Rogue like.
but then presumably also something like Dead Cells would be in that category as well.
Yeah, not even a full rogue for Dead Cells. Rogue like.
But you get the choice over path in that one. I give it 2 rogues.
And you do
really
you do
2 rogues.
Move into enemies to kill them, and it's a melee game.
You can do forward roll through enemies.
So it was something like Crypt of the Necrodancer, because you move.
That's quite roguey.
It is quite roguey.
I give that at least 2 rogues, probably 3 rogues.
And would you qualify the dancing as a modern convenience? Because it's actually just a complication.
It's a modern annoyance.
Yeah. So what would that be? Like,
yeah, I mean,
rogue.
The visuals have to count as a convenience. So I'd probably, rogue like.
Rogue like.
This is
perfectly logical. It's a really good system. Like, I can't see any.
I'm glad someone's finally solved the problem of genre.
Yeah, now there'll be no debates about this.
Yeah. All genres should be assessed in this way. Like, the ever thorny issue of first person games, right? Like, is Deus Ex a shooter really, or does it have shooting in it, right? Is Thief an FPS would be, maybe you add...
It's an FF.
No, you add first.
PPPP.
You add first. You add first for, immersive qualities. You add person... For
upgrading
RPG
and
qualities.
Yeah.
Either personally, as in your person or your interaction with other people, and you add shooter for shooting.
How shooty is.
So Doom is a first person shooter.
FPS.
Yeah. Whereas Deus Ex is something like a first person shooter. I feel like we've solved a lot of issues here.
Yeah. And so, what's that? The Talos principle gets no P because you're not even a person in it. So it's just F, and no S's either, so it's just FFFF. We might need some other letters.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, what a bad system this is.
We should use
there was
forever.
this really good, basically a proposal for a different way of rating movies, where instead of like the stars out of 5, this person was proposing you should give every movie 2-star ratings. One is for how, like, worthy and well made it is, and the other is for how fun it is. So you get to vary those completely independently. Something can be incredibly worthy and beautifully crafted, but it's just 0 fun. And other things can be, fun but ineptly made and kind of trashy. And I think it's like value in
I was thinking, oh yeah, that would, something like, Transformers, right? So, but then I thought, hang on.
Not even that fun.
It's it's not fun. There's technical aspects of its making that are very good, but like the actual filmmaking aspects of its technical thing is really bad.
I think the metric was worthiness. It wasn't sort of, technical competence.
Oh, okay.
It was like,
merit.
Kind of.
Do you feel that people really tried?
Well, that was the thing. I was going to say the third axis should be, did this look hard to do?
And if you score like 0 for fun, 0 for worthiness, and maximum for hard to do,
you got yourself a Transformers film.
But then commercial success is like a whole other thing.
Yeah, right. You just keep adding categories until you've written a review.
We could blend that with your genre system. That's basically all the reviewing, just sorted out.
Good.
What you play, Chris? What you play, Chris?
Rogue host. I've been playing,
Rogue host.
I guess I would describe the game I've been playing as a rogue like and a half.
Where's it on the FPS scale?
It is, it's none of them. It's kind of, it's just
There's a person.
person. I would describe it as person.
I'm playing good person right now.
And it's a game that's come up a bunch of times on the podcast over the last couple of years, which is Exanima, which I keep thinking of as a mispronunciation of the word examiner. Like I didn't get on with my driving Exanima. And I would completely understand why people don't always get on with driving Exanima, because its movement controls are difficult. That's that entire joke, and I can't, it's not Tom, we cleared this. It doesn't even have a single
PP.
It's, so Exanima is the game that, sui generis became. I think we ended up discussing it sort of, obliquely on a recent episode of the podcast, and it's come up before, I think. Marsh has definitely talked about it in the past.
It's the Drunk Skeletons game.
It's the Drunk Skeletons game, yeah. And so I ended up playing it because it was linked on Discord basically, and I'd been meaning to play it for ages. And it's been in early access for such a long time, so I don't necessarily feel like I'm qualified to assess where it is at now versus where it was years ago, but.
Do you know how much is it actively being?
Yeah, it has an update in July, so
right.
Yeah, with new stuff, flails.
Flails?
Yeah, flails for a game about flailing, which is, yeah. Now you can be a physicsy man wielding a physicsy object.
It's physics squared.
It is. It's physics.
It's so fascinating. I watched the Steam trailer for it because I knew about Sui Generis. I didn't know it had become another game since. And watching the Steam trailer, it had all the things in it that I remember from the Kickstarter for Sui Generis. And I'd love to sort of be in the room when they made the trailer because they have so much to show off. It's so technically competent. It kind of looks beautiful in its own way. And it's so richly simulated. Things, fall off tables in a really convincing way and everything. And then as soon as two people try and fight, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating for that reason. So basically, I feel like I need to introduce it from top level if you're not aware of what it is. So it's a, isometric, dungeon crawler with permadeath. I wouldn't call it a roguelike actually, so maybe I gave it too much rogue in my description. It is sort of dungeon crawlery in that sense and top down. But it's a set layout. It's not procedure generated, and it's more that it's just punishing than anything else. It's just hard. And this is in its kind of principle to dungeon crawling mode. It's a kind of dark fantasy world, in that there are sort of undead and zombies and things walking around, but actually one of its most unsettling qualities is most of them aren't aggressive. People just sort of will ignore you or go about their business until you make eye contact with them for too long or are in a combat stance near them or something like that. This is at least early on. And then its whole thing is physics basically. You are, a momentum driven, physical body in this space. So you steer yourself around. It's sort of intended to be played almost entirely with the mouse, but with some keyboard stuff, but you can also sort of steer yourself using the WASD keys, and you control like a tank basically. But also, the world itself is full of sort of manipulable objects. So when you're in a certain radius of a door, a chair, anything, you can click and drag objects to pick them up and move them around. And your character doesn't do this with their hands, and it's not really that you have mind powers. It's funny, because if you watch someone else play, it doesn't look immersive at all to be walking around and then sort of pull a door open with the mouse cursor and have this just happen. But actually when you are playing, it feels like opening and closing and slamming doors and so on. And everything interacts in a really granular way. So, you can easily, when you first open a door, you have to kind of test to see if it's a push or a pull, because you can easily just open a door on yourself and then close it by accident while trying to walk through it because your arm gets snagged on it. If you are running or sprinting and you can easily trip over a low object, it's actually pretty convincingly done. Like, it is what happens if you're sprinting and you don't look where you're going and you trip over a wheelbarrow, and you go sprawling to the ground. You can drop the stuff you're carrying and have to pick them back up by even picking things up.
Like half an hour picking up every piece of armor you're wearing.
Opening your inventory panel and dragging things off the game world onto yourself or onto the inventory. It's sort of very kind of realistic, I guess, in that way. And there is the sort of gratification of escaping enemies by knocking things down in front of them to slow them down or slamming doors and trying to escape. And then combat is its own kind of animal. Because combat is also it's not, realism isn't the right word, but it's driven by the same systems. So the weight balance of a weapon really matters for how much damage it does. Damage is predominantly based by how fast the weapon was moving at the point where it impacted with something. So, it is not occasionally landing a hit. It's like landing a solid hit, which feels a lot more like something like Mordhau or a sword fighting game, because that stuff really, really matters. And so the way it works is when you're in a combat stance, you will automatically attempt to block or parry every blow that comes towards you. And all you can really do is move the mouse to face that direction. And you can, when you're in combat mode, it's like you strafe and sort of step forward and back rather than trying to turn. A bit like Dark Souls lock-on without the lock-on. So your lock-on is just wherever your mouse cursor is. I hope that makes sense. But you're not so you are circling, but there's more work involved in circling than there would be, because you're having to kind of move the mouse in a contrary direction to your direction of movement in order to circle around someone. You can step in and out and you're sort of swinging your weapons, and then you can, choose to determine whether it's an overhead strike or a jab or a swing of the sword or whatever it is you're carrying. And, if you are, and then it's really, deeply physicsy in a way that puts it, despite the kind of grimdark presentation, puts it in the same territory as Gang Beasts. It is slapstick to an extent, apart from the fact that it's quite effective. What's weird about it is no matter how good you get with the combat system, and there is finesse, and there's stuff to learn, you can be good at it, it will always look messy as hell. And not in a broken way. It's just it never really escapes pub car park drunken brawl. Drunken's probably the word for it. And the reason for that, this applies to the whole system, is it has really realistic attention to the physics of bodies and how they move. But the one thing it doesn't simulate at all is all of the things bodies do to balance and secure themselves.
When you're describing kind of sprinting along a corridor and tripping over, it's not how it would be, because you would have noticed it.
Yeah,
subconsciously just stepped.
Well, subconsciously is the key thing. Your brain does so much work. Yeah. So I have never in my life tried to open a door, and then while walking through the door, caught the door on my shoulder and closed it in my own face.
Well, actually, no, I have done that.
But you could do that. I could believe that happening if I was sufficiently drunk. That's the thing, because the one thing drinking does is switch off those parts of your motor functions that make these small decisions for you. And because this game asks you to make all those small decisions yourself, that's actually quite unnatural. And so I would be interested to see how it played, and maybe this is where the technology might eventually go, how it would play if it handled certain things for you. I can tell you're trying to walk through a door that's only most of the way open. You will just push it the rest of the way open as you go through, because that's what you would do. Similarly, it actually works a little bit better in fights in some ways, because it's okay for a fight to be a messy clash of things. It's if you're fighting someone who has a long, a pole arm, there's, enemies that have a poleaxe or basically a stick with a hook on the end kind of thing. They're quite nasty weapons. Because you can be fighting with chair legs and bits of table and stuff as well, planks and iron bars as well as swords and stuff like that. Moving into them often makes quite a lot of sense, because if you move into them, you end up pushing their arms up and they can't hit you because they're at such close range to you. And backing off is dangerous because they might get a swipe in, but they're unlikely to be able to really pull it back and hit you with it, so it's unlikely to be a really, really damaging blow.
Which sort of feels true to life.
It feels right, yeah.
Also, I guess, looks tough.
It's basically feels like tabs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it feels messy. It's there's a lot of sort of but in a good way, it feels like you're sort of fighting for your life. And so I played a bunch of the RPG mode, which is, it's very atmospheric. It's very, very difficult. And that has been sort of lots of interesting moments. There are things that don't really work for me, you have your health bar basically, and it's kind of consistent. So when you take damage, if it is usually if it's blunt damage or relatively light hits, it hurts your health bar, but it doesn't do permanent damage. That damage will regenerate. And if you run out of that, you pass out rather than dying. But if you take a heavy strike from a bladed weapon particularly, you take red damage, which basically permanently reduces your health cap, and that is you've been hit with a sword. This is very different to being sort of bonked over the head with a chair leg kind of thing. And if you run out of too many sword blows, and you're just dead. But one thing that happens is often you get into a fight with somebody. If they knock you out, you fade to black and you fade back in again. I think the idea is like you've been knocked out and then you come to. And often the person who knocked you out, the AI, sometimes they'll leave, and that's often a good moment. You have to like pick your stuff up off the floor and kind of like stagger off. And you limp and things when you're wounded. Like the attention is to like making you feel this stuff. Often, if it's like the place where that person lives, they'll have let you just be unconscious on the floor for a bit. But as soon as you get up, they will hit you again. And so sometimes that can be like, I had a fight where I ran into a room, someone surprised me, and I backed off while sprinting and tried to move backwards while sprinting. And I tripped backwards over a chair and got the chair kind of caught on my leg and fell into a table so that I was sort of sitting on the table, like with a chair stuck on my leg, trying to parry with my iron bar as someone comes at me with an axe. And it was kind of scary.
That does feel quite combaty, like a real life
like
kind
just
of,
trying to force them away and trying to stand up, but also being pushed back by their strikes. So basically, and then eventually they got like a blow through that actually knocked me out. And as I came to, I was just like, on this tape, like lying on half on this table, and then you start to wake up and in a kind of kinematic kind of animation sort of way pick yourself up, at which point this axe just comes back down like straight into the forehead and dead now. And it was brutal but quite effective actually as a sort of
this is like any other game designer would just like have some marked safe spots in the world, and it just teleports while you're blacked out, teleports you to the nearest safe spot, and you wake up there.
No,
oh, it's not true to the simulation. You would wake up in their house and they would hit you again.
They'd leave you sleeping in their room.
Yeah. Oh, you're alive? Oh, okay. And sometimes they will just knock you unconscious again, and then you'll wake up again, and they just keep doing this until you're dead. So the other mode, and I don't know if it had this previously, is called Arena mode. And this is almost a completely different game. So in this mode, you create a main character. So yeah, you kind of create your own person, basically, in both modes. And one thing maybe to note about it is it's lightly not safe for work. Like, it doesn't have any kind of like sexualized content in it at all, apart from the fact that, men and women are both topless. So you choose clothes when you think, but when you first create a female character, for example, not wearing a top. And it's just kind of like, it's its way of, I don't know,
That's how it is.
It's how it is. There isn't, and the female bodies in the game are not sexualized. In fact, you have height and weight sliders, and musculature sliders for characters, and they actually matter. Taller characters trip over easier because they have a higher center of gravity. Shorter characters get hit in the head with polearms far more readily because they don't have a shorter reach. And this is true of life as far as I understand it. So that's kind of fun, like being able to make a short character and try and take advantage of that. And
that's the line almost nobody crosses, right? They all have character customizers, but it's always like, but it never matters, never has any effect.
So, sex doesn't matter, like biological sex doesn't matter, but your height and weight does.
Oh,
so,
that's cool.
And there are, male bodies and female bodies you can choose between. And I only put that as a caveat, like if you were worried about playing this in front and worried that someone might see a boob, you might see a boob. But so in arena mode, you create, an initial character, and they are your manager. You can also play with them, but they are the manager of like a team of arena fighters. And then you're basically a hub area which has a shop and a roster access and things like that. And you can recruit. There's two kinds of people you can recruit, basically. You can go back to the character creator and make more characters, which are cheaper, but they are essentially you. So they are essentially player characters, and when you go for an arena battle, that's the one you will be. So you can only ever deploy one of them at a time. And if your manager dies, the game is over. Your run is over through the arena. So you might want to have a backup character to be the person that does a lot of the fighting. And then as you get money, you can hire NPC fighters that if it's a one-on-one bout that you're entering, you will have to just watch them fight because you don't get to control them. But you also have like team battles where you would have multiple of them fighting alongside you. And then you enter these events, basically, which range from fist fights to one-on-one duels to like tournaments, essentially, like where you got to fight multiple opponents in a row, to sort of mass sort of royal rumbles where everyone's fighting everyone else, to team battles. And any injuries incurred in those games, in those battles, persist. So your team gets injured, and then the same thing is sort of true that the red damage will ultimately kill them, yellow damage will ultimately only knock them out. So you can be knocked out or killed, and then every time you do a fight, I believe time progresses slightly. It's not really clear what it is that advances time, but that sort of cycles the items that are available in the shop, and people slowly heal. So you leave people on the bench for a while to heal them up. You level them up, you buy them new equipment, you kind of build this little sort of team of gladiators. It's very lightweight as management games go, but I've actually enjoyed that a little bit more than the RPG because it's provided a sandbox to learn the combat system in, and it's made me a lot more capable with it. And also there's something quite, fun about building this little squad and then trying to navigate, like the team battles are fun because you're trying to navigate that physics system.
Because you're going to be, presumably you can hit your own team.
While trying to avoid hitting your own, teammates. And I found that my favorite cheap weapon in the game is the metal pipe. And so, like, there's a lot of like, and now I'm getting reasonably good at it, so I can sort of like navigate these multi-man melees and try and pick your positioning and things, and all the physics kind of play to its advantage because you end up in situations where you get cornered and you have to like literally push your way out via one person while trying to use them as a human shield against the other people who are also trying to kill everyone else. And that's actually quite fun, really. And then, to its credit, when the simulation kind of kicks in, it is kind of like entertainingly brutal, like someone tripping over in an arena fight and then getting mobbed and kind of like beaten up. Or like when you do, I think the core to the combat system really is stepping in as you strike and stepping back again to get out of range for a counterattack. Like if you can start nailing that, you start to learn. Because the interesting thing is, like when you're moving around, when you're stepping, it is more like stepping. Like, I don't know if you've ever done any sort of boxing or martial arts or fencing, like I used to fence, and doing a step in real life is more turn-based than you think, really. Like people don't glide in real life, right? Like lunging and like moving definitively forwards and backwards takes energy to do. Obviously, if you're unimpeded, you can walk and run. Obviously, we're talking about
facts from the Crate and Crowbar podcast.
But what I'm saying is stepping in and stepping out are quite definitive movements in real life. Yeah. And because of the physics of this, that actually simulates that. Like you don't slide back and forwards.
Yeah, in most games you are a capsule collider that is sliding smoothly according to acceleration rules that doesn't go in discrete steps.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in this, you step in, you step back out. And so you've got to account for a delay on those actions, which I think when you first start playing it can make it feel sluggish because you press W or whatever to step in, and your character is going to push with their leg and then put their legs forward to do a step like one does in real life. And that just takes a bit more time, and it's a bit more, and so knowing like, and then there's a timing. So you hold the mouse button to bring a swing back, but you can't hold it indefinitely. So it's not that you hold it and then release. You hold it to begin the sort of wind up and strike. So a lot of it is learning how to time, and this again doesn't feel 100% right, but it's like you learn how to time the timing on your steps with the timing on whatever weapon you're carrying. So it's like step and swing, and then if you get that right, you'll step in and swing in just about enough time to give your swing extra momentum. And when that connects, like with the side of someone's temple or something, and causes the head to kind of like snap back and they fall over unconscious, it feels great. But it also feels slightly unrealistic again, because in real life, your body can handle timing your arms and your legs at the same time. And this asks you to do both, basically, and to micromanage that stuff. But I do find it kind of interesting. And, despite the fact that even getting good at it still makes it look like two drunk people trying to hit each other with pool cues, there is satisfaction in like the finesse of like handling a combat situation well, and like
the finesse of a drunken brawl.
Yeah, and the fact that the physicsiness opens up solutions to problems beyond do more damage, try and take less damage. It can be sort of like, I'm going to push into this person to deny them the use of their long weapon, and I'm going to then try and angle them so that their teammate can't hit me, and then I'm going to disengage from combat mode and sprint to the other corner of the room, and then spin, and then as I spin, try and do a swing so that the momentum of my turn actually carries that big metal pipe into someone's head. Like that stuff actually feels not like any other game I've played, actually, to be honest. So yeah, quite like it.
It's I feel like it's one of the check boxes on the back of the box feature list for everyone's naive game design vision.
Yeah,
Why isn't there an MMO where you can just do everything and be everyone and be everything and go everywhere? And also everything's physically simulated and everything's just real and it's all just works. It's like, well, this is what happens if you pick one of those things and devote everything to it and sacrifice everything else. And it's cool in some ways.
Because I was thinking
has some drawbacks.
Yeah, like the idea of, going through a door, like how does the game know that to switch off various aspects of the physics system just because you're going through a door, because a door isn't just another thing in the world. Like there's so many things they've got to
it is hard
do to make it behave.
And obviously in real life, tripping over is a thing that does happen. And there's,
but is it fun?
It is kind of fun. Like it's punishing.
In real life, a thing that happens in my real life quite often is I trip on nothing at all. but I also recover. Like I don't fall flat on my face. I kind of like my foot inexplicably just hits the ground in a way that is not conducive to walking, and I'm stumbling for like half a second, and then I'm fine again. And
I fall over far more while standing completely still. Yeah, I had a moment. I was at an office warming party, and this is just maybe in defense of Exanima, right? How real physics works. And I was stood next to a radiator, like one of the small sort of 2 foot high, wall mounted radiators, chatting to a friend. And I was leaning, and I was stood with my feet crossed because I decided to stand like that and leaning against the wall. And with my feet crossed, I got the back of the heel of my shoe stuck under the bottom lip of the radiator.
Yeah, I've done that.
And then the fact that this is hard to describe purely audibly, but because my feet were crossed, this functionally meant that I was completely
You'd locked the other foot in.
I'd locked the other foot in. So they're basically like, I couldn't move my free foot, without basically like probably snapping my ankle but I would basically immediately collapse forward counterwards to the way my ankle joint goes. And so, but by keeping that foot in place, it propped my other ankle up in the place where it was stuck. So I basically had just, like, if it was a game, I would have gotten stuck in the geometry, like vibrated really intensely and then spranged off.
Making minor impact noises and then falling out of bounds.
Why we're doing this in your friend's new office.
Yeah, right. Like, and I mean, this is the thing. I was basically revealing some kind of like speedrun hack. Like, if you do this, you vibrate really hard and then you're on the top floor through like the key locked door or something.
Did you pass out and then wake up later at the same party with people beating with axes?
Not at that time. But basically I had to turn to the person I was talking to and say, can you hold my drink? I need to fall over. Because the only way out was to basically like fully ragdoll. Because if I went completely limp, like I would fall over but with both legs at the same time, which was the only way out, was to like, because if I was basically, there was no way to get out and remain with one foot on the ground. Because I had to, but the only way out would be to twist with both my feet, which is traditionally a way of falling on your ass. And so that's what I had to do. And I was completely sober and I'd been there for like 20 minutes and it was
Could your friend kind of embrace you and?
Well, they would have to have cradled me and lowered me to the ground. That would be, I mean, I don't know if he felt like it was somebody who I could ask that of.
You got to do a cost benefit analysis.
Because this is the question, like, I knew this had happened, but it was completely invisible to anyone else.
I mean, it's taken a while to explain, so I can see why.
So I'd have to turn to them and say, I'm sorry, for physics reasons, I need to cradle me and lower me to the earth. Because otherwise I'm going to break my ankle by standing up. And so what I did was just say, like, can you hold this a second? I need to fall over. And just sort of like went bump onto the ground and then sort of freed my legs and just stood back up again immediately. And like, I just refused to explain it to anyone else at the party who noticed because it wasn't worth the time. It was like, I managed to get stuck. I've freed it now. Like it was like typing /stuck in an MMO and being teleported like 4 feet forward. And so because that has happened to me, maybe I'm more willing to forgive Exanima's
That's their target audience.
Physics issue.
Their foot stuck in a radiator.
Yeah, exactly. But like people who've experienced real life physics issues, basically.
Yeah. Like, so we sometimes get the question to the podcast of like, what is your dream mashup, or like what developer would you assign to pick up some other developer's game? And mine is now Naughty Dog to pick up this game and like finish it, because they are like masters of polish, but also especially with Last of Us 2. Some of the stuff it showed there is very focused on like dynamic animation and making sure like whatever's happening to your character in the sort of gamey free movement stuff is reflected in a very realistic and convincing way in terms of all that stuff we're talking about what your subconscious does, how your hands reach out and brush past things and how your body contorts and stuff. So I feel like that's their area of expertise, and if they could just somehow plug that into this, give them $1 billion in 18 years.
And they'll make a game where you don't fall over yourself while trying to get through the door. Yeah. I think the alternative would just be to establish that this is a game about being super drunk. And
just everyone's drunk.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone else is a zombie. Zombies, it's okay. I think if you were a zombie, it would make more sense.
Yeah.
Like,
the old zombie game.
Those are the two classes, zombie or drunk.
Exactly. What have you been playing, Tom?
I have finally played Fire Emblem, Three Houses, which is my first Fire Emblem game. And I've always wanted to play it because I'm very, very interested in this, like, overlap between story stuff and tactic stuff. You know, that's, it's kind of a holy grail in that it's something that, is rarely combined well. And so it's been very educational to see how that's done. It's nuts. Like, I have also chosen Black Eagle House, as I did Chris, which basically, I mean, all you really have to go on is the people in it. Like, and so I just looked at the roster of people and just decided I liked that batch of people better than the other batch of people.
There's no one in Black Eagle House whose voice acting sounds like a sad dog toy deflating, and then that is one of its main strengths.
So I mean, the thing that I wasn't ready for is just the size of the cast. Like, so there's 9 people in my class, and when I go to battle, I just take all 9 of them. There's just 10 of us. Like, and then there's obviously 3 houses, as the title implies, and each of them has 9 people. And even if you don't play as those are characters in your world who you're going to talk to and have relationships with. And so that straight up is like 27 people. And then there's the faculty staff, there's like at least another 10. There's about 40 main characters just that you're going to regularly see. And I guess when you're writing that many characters, they do a good job of, like, they are distinct. They definitely have different personalities, but when you're trying to come up with 40 distinct personalities, they get kind of niche. Like, there's one person in Black Eagle House whose thing is just they're tired. That's their personality. I'm just sleepy.
I find him one of the most relatable characters.
It is, yeah, I've been tired. But like when you're writing a character and you, like, I know what the brief is like in these situations. You get told, like, okay, we need you to write, we have 48 different lines the character has to say. I want you to get across the character's personality in each one of those. So he has to get across, I'm tired, and like his level up spiel. Just like, I could be sleeping right now.
I think one of his like kill lines is like, it's pretty embarrassing to be killed by me. I'm very tired. Linhart, you rogue or wizard.
And it's obviously, you are, the whole conceit of the game is you're training these people, you're improving their stats and stuff, which is kind of what you're doing in an RPG normally anyway, but this focusing on it gives them lots of excuses to basically make bars go up, and that's inherently satisfying, and the fact that you're making everyone better at all these different things all the time, feels good. I had one mission where I almost gave up on the whole game because I think the level design is not at all, I imagine much more of a Battlefield kind of thing. Sort of open, field of combat, and it all being about use of abilities and stuff. And it's much more like level design. It's that there is very, very designed levels that don't really map to convincing spaces, just like, it's old school level design. It's how you used to design a dungeon and, or
tile based
battlefield, back in the day before anyone cared about representing real places. And so it's just, this is going to be a level with 2 different paths, and this is a level that introduces teleporter pads, and it tells you about them.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and it points them out to you, and it's like, the boss you're trying to defeat is a Death Knight, and it's really built up that this Death Knight is a big deal. And like I say, you've got this huge horde of people, like 9 fucking people. And you can go left or right. And I spent time, just panning around the map, examining it, seeing how it all worked. And I could see the teleporter pads would get you to this other chamber that had a chest in it, and then from there you could go into like some other chambers also with chests in it, and then the left route led you directly through normal space to the actual boss. So I was like, okay, I can see I can go get some bonus chests if I use the teleporters, but actually this Death Knight has been bigged up a lot. I really want to make sure I just win this mission. It's one of the big plot critical ones. I'm just going to take all 9 of my people to the Death Knight. Along that route are several locked doors, and to open a locked door you need a key, and there are like 2 locked doors along the way, and I actually brought a door key with me to the mission somehow.
You can buy them from the shop. They work at every door.
I think
which is the weakness of the keys, really.
Yeah. I don't think I ever bought one. I think I just had one from another mission.
Yeah, right.
But even with that, I opened 2 locked doors, and then I got to the final group of guards in front of the chamber that the Death Knight is in. And I used both of my 2 door keys. I killed all of them. None of them had a door key. And now I'm just looking at this fucking locked door with the Death Knight behind it. And it's got a bizarre aggro system, a bizarre targeting system. You can just shoot through walls in this game for some reason. If you have a ranged attack, you can just shoot through walls, and enemies will shoot you through walls. But also, most important characters won't go to you. They'll just stand where they are, and they don't care what happens around them.
That's a classic.
They'll sit there until they're directly attacked, or until you move really close to them.
Yeah.
And so this Death Knight, so 9 characters. I am 16 turns in at this point. So I have made over 100 decisions to get to this point. Like, it is, every single person is being moved every single turn. You have to move and decide what action they're going to do. A lot of the time you can't get them to an effective position, so they're just waiting. Other times you've got to figure out what order to do them in. You also want them to be standing near each other to buff their relationships. And all that stuff. I've spent probably like an hour to get to this point, and we just don't have another fucking key. We just can't get to the fucking Death Knight. He's in this room, and we just can't go there. And now I see that, there's...
Perhaps someone keeps keys in chests that should be locked.
You go the other way, you get more keys.
There's a bunch of dormant teleporter pads, and when you mouse over them, or cursor over them, it tells you these will be teleporter pads when the device is activated. It doesn't say what device, but I can see some switches on the other side, and I kind of knew about that. But I figured there were ways of getting to the chests and getting out from the chest rooms once you're already in there. But if those were on right now, I would be able to skip to the other side and all that stuff. And so I'm just sitting there. I'm not even trying to decide whether I restart the mission or try to salvage it. The decision is, do I restart the mission or do I just stop playing this game forever? Because I don't know if I can face just redoing all of that work just because there weren't enough fucking keys in the fucking level to get through the fucking door through the normal fucking way. And then just one of the things I try is there is a auto battle option, which I had discovered previously. I thought it was like an auto resolve, like just I give up on this mission, let's do it for me. It's not. It just takes control of your characters for one turn, and you get to say whether you want them to like charge or focus or be defensive or whatever. And so just experimentally I tried like, what happens if I tell you to charge right now? What direction do you think I should go? Because if they would like intelligently pathfind all the way back to the start and do all the teleporter shit, then I would be happily click that button a bunch of times to make that happen. But no, they ran just towards the Death Knight and just stood next to the locked door they couldn't open and got shot by the mages. I killed all the mages I could kill from outside the room. You can't reach the Death Knight, but my archers could shoot most of his backup people. And then just while, I started to send I had one person on a horse who I'd borrowed from another house. None of my people can ride horses yet. But this one borrowed student could. So I was sending them back to the teleporters, and while they were there, to like soften it up for them, I had my long-range archers shoot through the walls to the other path that I should have taken way back from the start. And while they were fighting those people, my archers are really good and also invested in like super long-range abilities. They can shoot from many tiles away. And my star archer was just killing these people, basically, like shooting fish at barrel. And suddenly, she killed one and said, "You've gained a door key." Yeah. So someone in that side of the thing I didn't even think about them having door keys. I was just trying to turn on the teleporters. I assumed there were no more door keys in the level, but I killed them through a wall, which makes no sense. And then when I killed them, I got the door key they were carrying, which also makes no sense. And then used that to open the thing and then killed the Death Knight pretty easily.
That is like 100% accurate. Like I had an issue with that as well, where I ended up having to send my professor, me character back by himself because he's the only one, he can fight almost anything by himself to fight everyone to gain, but like to weaken them so that people could snipe them through the walls to get keys, because people who deal the killing blow get the item. And so it's like, it's completely appropriate to all of Fire Emblem's logic, but it's also completely batshit, as you state. I think that level kind of exposes it quite brutally. Like, it very rarely gates you like that. Like, most levels are fairly open and they're, it's not going to tell you no. Whereas that one is a weird one.
I'm sure going to buy some door keys after this.
This is the
Actually, no, I've switched my main character to thief now, so I think I'll be able to pick the locks in future.
Yeah.
I was thinking while you were describing the physics game Exanima about, like, I've just been working on a book about sort of early Japanese game industry and how the Japanese RPG came out of Ultima and Wizardry, which were kind of, the earliest attempts to, or very early, but the most popular attempts to convert the RPG into computer form. And I think it's fair to say, I think that they, like Garriott, had the image of making coherent, like, physicsy worlds, right? Which he continued to kind of, the later Ultima games just were more and more naturalistic. And, then Ultima, which he didn't work on, but like that led to Ultima Underworld, and that kind of thing, which were massively physics led. Whereas the Japanese took sort of Ultima and Wizardry and just went abstract as fuck with it. It was turn-based battling. What can you do with turn-based stuff? And, just rift and rift and rift. And you end up with Fire Emblem where it's just abstractions all over the fucking place, which when you've played them all, it works in a completely consistent way. So exactly, the boss is always going to stand there until it's Fire Emblem. That's what happens, and there are reasons why you do that. But it's just, I find it really interesting that kind of like these two completely divergent, like Exanima definitely comes from Ultima.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
And they've just come from this single source and they're just completely divergent.
Yeah, there is no way to have a perfect tea time in Exanima. You just get it all over yourself.
Drunken tea time.
Yeah, exactly. Are you enjoying Fire Emblem? Because I was really sure which way you'd come down on it because of the amount of bullshit.
I thought you'd hate it.
I thought you'd hate it, yeah.
No, I'm getting really invested in the characters stuff. I think I care about, it's that element of deciding who you want to be in this world and who you care about from this cast of characters. That is so powerful that it almost doesn't matter if the characters themselves are not that great. Yeah. They're interesting. None of them are actually someone I would want to be friends with. Unlike, BioWare games sometimes achieve those heights of I actually really like this person. I read a book about them. The character themselves is interesting. This kind of demonstrates that even if the characters are a bit caricatured and exaggerated and, for example, just have one theme each.
I'm sleepy. Yes, and I've just flowered you up.
I will still absolutely immediately think, I like Petra and I like Dorothea and just pick favorites and then pick people I hate. I don't like Ferdinand. And so he's my tank. He's going to take all the damage. Actually, that just happened naturally.
You playing with permadeath?
No. I don't even understand how that's possible. From the way I'm playing, people just fucking die really unexpectedly, just out of nowhere. This mage apparently can one-shot any of us. And, I don't know how I was supposed to know that beforehand. So I'm very glad I'm playing on casual.
It's the rewind function.
Yeah.
There's rewind functions then.
There's a dragon lady lives in your brain, turns back time.
Fair enough.
Much like Cher.
Almost despite myself.
Because she's turning back time. She's finding a way.
Yeah. 3 times per mission.
It's not just if, it's when. You were saying, Tom.
Yeah, despite myself, I'm getting invested in these relationships. And also when you gamify it, when you say but if you're standing next to Petra when you do this attack, you'll both get extra points for that. So now okay, that's all that matters. I don't care if several of you die because I need to be standing next to Petra when I do this attack so that we bond over it.
The thing I really like about it, so the other nuts thing about having such a huge primary cast is not only do they have conversations with you, they all have conversations with each other because each of them has a support rank conversation for when they like each other enough. Yeah. And you have to watch these in order for that support rank bonus to actually kick in. And I think there's often a lot of, I think one of the reasons that the sort of single emblematic personality trait thing works is because they then are interesting in combination with each other. Like, I can imagine the writing challenges. What do these two characters have to say to each other? Because they need to say something. Like, we can't do the traditional game thing of like, these characters don't really talk to each other. It's like, every single one of them needs to have the seeds of a relationship, at least with all of them. And then whether or not those relationships progress is up to the player. But there is something kind of quite good about the kind of absolute kind of massive clashes of personality and the way those are written. And I think also those parts of the games are where the writers hide the weirdest writing.
Yeah.
Like some of those conversations are just really strange.
I love, like, there was obviously some, I want to imagine that within the studio, somebody who is tasked with writing these conversations said, so for like support level C, what level of sort of friendship and bonding and similarity and, you know, connection should we really be representing? And whoever's in charge said, oh no, don't worry about that at all. Just write whatever. Whatever fits these two characters, just write whatever you think they would say to each other. Does not matter at all how close or how incredibly far away they seem at the end of it.
Right, like I mean, cause the probably, I mean, I'm gonna get flack on Discord for saying this, probably the most annoying Black Eagle character is probably Bernadetta. And like, she's quite sweet, but her whole thing, and have you progressed your own support rank with her? Cause the reason why she's afraid all the time is fucking horrifying.
No, I haven't got
right,
far.
like, you know, it's full on, like, she's had an awful life, and that's why she's afraid all the time, but she is the sort of, the trope of the shy character who wants to hide. And
I actually had a bit of a turning point with her because I read it. Well, so I think this is maybe unintentional, but, the turning point that I had, but I saw it as a very, overdone cliche if she's incredibly timid and through, because your whole job is to level them up and get them to have success and build sort of relationships and their skills. I naturally assumed the arc was going to be we build her up to be more social and make friends and stuff. And I think it's probably going to go that way. But there was just one line she said when somebody else went missing. She just said, you know, has anyone ever considered she might just want to be alone? Like maybe it's just nice to be alone and you don't actually want to be around other people. And I was like, fuck, maybe that's your whole thing. Maybe I should just leave you alone. Like,
right. But like a lot of her conversations with other people are about her being like, afraid of them, terrified by them, wanting to hide from them, not wanting to talk to them. And in some cases, like I think it's a support conversation with Hubert, who is like young Snape, like Y-U-N-G. Like he's like it's just young Snape. There's no real way around it. And like his conversation with her, he follows her in order to give her a really simple bit of advice, but he's like following her around the school in like a really ominous way. And I think he's just there to say like, you know, oh, you forgot your book in the lesson or something like that. Here it is back. But by the time she realizes that she's being followed, by the time he finally arrives, she's convinced he's there to murder her, like completely convinced and like begs for her life. And it's kind of like horrifying. And then he's like, I just came to return this book. And then she screams. And then it's like, Hubert and Bernadetta are support rank C.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with Dorothea where, so I've looked at the support screen and you can see in like grayed out what the maximum rank you can have with each character.
Yeah.
And from what I gather, S rank is kind of the romance-ish kind of level.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily be a romance, but it's sort of that.
The lawsuits in this school notwithstanding.
Yeah. I'm assured there is a time skip. I've played for 18 hours. The time skip has not yet happened. Everyone's still underage and I'm still their teacher, but I'm assured there is a time skip that makes this all okay.
Have you had the conversation where someone goes, no one knows how old you are. You could be younger than your students.
Yeah, I have noticed there's a question mark over my age. But, so thinking ahead and with my BioWare training, I'm, you know, want to keep any romance options open, for my character. And there aren't that many I'm a female character, and the only people I like are all women. And so Dorothea, I think, is the only romance option that I have that's available to me that is actually a character I kind of like. And so my support rank C, scene with her, she says, like, she thinks your character is interfering with her, like, dating boys, and she, without you saying anything, kind of says, you have no right to tell me what to do. And then, you know, I'm not just playing with these people, I'm really looking for someone to look after me the rest of my life, unless you'd like to do that. And then your options are like, to chide her or say, okay. Well, I don't want to choose this option, so I said, okay. And she's
honestly.
like, oh, I would like that. And then support rank C. And the next support rank C Yeah, that support rank C is I would like to care for you for the rest of your life. Yes, okay, I would like that too. And then the other support rank C conversation I had immediately after that was like, Hubert threatening to kill me if I ever do anything to Edelgard. Is like, you haven't done anything yet, but I will kill you if you do. Support rank C.
To be fair, I've had conversations like that. Like I don't want to spoil anything. The support rank B with Dorothea is even
Can't
more
even
of
imagine.
a fucking minefield. Because, do you mind if I say a minor thing about it it's not really a spoiler. It's basically like, your love life doesn't seem to be going anywhere, Professor. And you can go like, you basically don't say anything. You just, cause you're mute. So you just sort of go like,
Do the hand gesture?
like, yeah.
I love the
Do
gesture
kind
you
of
do when you
shrug.
just present your hand.
Yeah, you just go like,
Look at this hand.
and then she says something like, it's probably like, you're probably just not experienced enough, with romance. Would you like a little bit more experience? And your only reactions are basically, no, how dare you, and ellipsis.
What does ellipsis
To be fair,
do, Chris?
I would probably ellipsis in that
Yeah,
situation.
and so you can only, and you can't say that's not appropriate, or, we're in a school, or whatever. You can just, Dorothea is strategically one of your 18-year-old students, but like, it is this sort of, but you don't want to choose, no, I hate this, and you.
Yeah.
So you choose ellipsis, and you just go like,
Let's bang then.
no, and then she goes,
Look at my hand.
and she says something like, "Oh, Professor, when will you start reacting to things?" And then the scene ends. Like nothing happens. It's just like, "Oh, Professor, why do you get paralyzed?" It's like, because I can only think of two things to say. It's such a weird game. It's such a weird game.
It's like they've really turned up the weirdness, because like I played both of the ones on 3DS, and like I recognize everything you're saying. Like it's all, the systems all had, like the previous games had this there. But like this is kind of just like, put it in a school, and then what happens in, oh Jesus Christ.
Immediately after someone gets kidnapped, there's a fishing competition in their honour.
Yes.
And you can win great reputation with them by finding the massive trout they can't remember they wanted. And then you can talk to someone nearby who just looks at you and goes, this whole fishing competition is a massive fucking waste of time. What are you doing? And you're like, I don't know. All right.
It goes on for multiple weeks too. I've already participated, and then I, like, 2 weeks later, I did the explore option again, and still everyone is just talking about the fishing competition all the time. Everyone I talked to was like, oh, your fish is bigger than mine. Oh no, you need to catch a 4-star fish. Oh no, I don't want
3
to
years.
I got the mega fish on my the first go with the fishing bait, and so it ended the fishing competition immediately. So I turned around and everyone was like, oh, I guess it's done then. You've ruined this, Professor. I imagine we've talked about it quite a lot on the podcast now, and it's people who don't know what it is or might not play it, none the wiser about why this is somehow amazing. But it is basically great. Yeah.
I'm really surprised Tom likes it. It shouldn't
I am
be.
surprised Tom likes it because there's quite a lot of
Completely extraneous bullshit.
yeah, exactly.
I like turn-based tactical games on grids and leveling up characters and investing in characters.
Yeah.
And the new thing that this has that I haven't had in anything else is this how those characters bond and leveling up those relationships. It has all of the addictiveness of an RPG grind where you're making these incremental improvements all the time. And fucking hell, this game makes incremental improvements all the, every single attack you ever do cuts to a level up screen that shows those bars filling, even if you didn't level up. It's just like, did you know you got 2 more points in your bow skill for that? Even if you miss, you got like, here's your 2 points for your bow
If you
skill.
get hit,
Yeah, someone shoots you and it's like, here's your 2 more points.
Here's your reward.
But that plus, like,
And then also, this next shot is going to kill them forever.
that plus it's feeding into relationships between those characters. And of course that has all that combinatorial thing of like, you know, this character and that character. I'm heavily invested in me and Petra, somewhat invested in me and Dorothea because I guess that it goes further. And then everyone else is just kind of like happenstance and just like my healer and my tank are going to have a relationship because that person's healing them a lot. And then that
is this something that you're specifically interested in? Because like the previous games had like revolved around the idea of you had you only had one strong character who could generally tank for you and they could just deal with stuff. But leveling being what it is, they would get hardly any XP for it. Whereas, and then you had a weak character. If they get hit once, they're going to die. So the game was all about inching forwards, letting your weak characters do as much as they possibly can to get lots of XP. and just have the strong characters to
that's
mop
fine.
up. So that's in this. Is in
Pretty much, it's a little bit more forgiving because I feel like weaker characters can do more, generally speaking, like the combat techniques and stuff.
There's, like range is a huge deal. And I found most of the game is just figuring out, okay, if this archer shoots this mage, they'll take a bunch of damage in doing so. They'll kill the mage, but they'll take a bunch of damage in doing so because they're both ranged. They both have the same range. But if I use this other archer who's high enough level to use the curved shot, they can stand just in this one tile that's slightly at a range that this mage can't attack from, and then I get to kill them for free, 0 damage. And it's just been all about figuring out those combinations. And so far it's very heavily balanced towards archers because the archer combat arts a lot of them have longer range than anything else. And if you can hit someone when they can't hit you, that's just free. And everything else costs a lot.
Do you feel the pressure on you that like your archer's getting mega powerful, but the rest of your troops aren't getting XP?
Well, the weird thing is, so like my healer's doing fine. I have like Edelgard, who's like the leader of my house. She's like, has an axe and is very powerful in close combat. So she's the only close combat person who really gets a lot of XP because she's actually useful. Ferdinand, who I hate, he's this lance guy. I actually didn't start using him as a tank. It was just through sheer chance. He just always took the hit. Even if he wasn't the first guy, like people would seek him out, go round our other troops and just pick on Ferdinand. And I kind of hated him anyway. And I was like, okay, great. This is, this is fine by me. And so it's like a running joke. He never gets a hit in. He's just like, he's too slow to get to the front line. Everyone else, have more important troops. So I field first and then he can never catch up with them. And then people still seek him out and he takes all the damage as well. That's fine because he's an arrogant asshole.
My Ferdinand is the only guy who has a horse, and he has a battalion of monks who can cheer to make a huge radius of people much, much faster, like twice the speed. So because he's on a horse, he gets to move after doing an action.
Yeah.
So he moves into the bulk of all of my other students. His monks go, hooray! And then he moves forward again and then stays there. And then everyone else basically just like speed runs all the way up the board, basically. It's really good.
My Ferdinand is on course for a horse, as they say.
Course for a horse.
Because I didn't realize how important lances were until way too late. He's the only one who specializes in lances. And if you want to be on a horse, you got to be good at lances to pass the exams. And so
you have exams now.
He's the only one who's the first time I encountered the Death Knight, the first time you encounter them, it's not the objective to kill them, but it's an optional thing. And in fact, you're advised not to.
Yeah, it's
but
hard.
I sort of moused over them to see because it has a little icon saying they have an item on them. And I moused over the Death Knight to see what item do you get for killing a Death Knight. You get a Dark Seal. Ooh, mouse over the Dark Seal. What is that? It's an exam certification.
It allows you to become a bad wizard.
Mr. Francis, I can see that you've got this certification.
I believe you would like to take the dark driving test. It's mostly cool drifts.
Switch on your headlights now.
Or don't. This is the dark driving test. Anyway. It's a good game.
Yep.
That doesn't make any sense.
Good weird game.
So we've ended up talking about video games for longer than we normally would at this point in the podcast, in addition to moving house, holidays, and the time I fell over. For that reason, we're actually running a little bit short on recording time because of the hour that it currently is
He's used
on
up
the
his
Wednesday.
hard drive.
Yeah, well, hopefully not, because otherwise we've got a bigger problem. But yeah, so we're actually going to give questions a miss this week. I'm saying that's like it's a question. It's not. It's a statement. Partly also because of the weird timing of the last couple of recordings. The recording dates are a bit squashed together, so we haven't got quite like the pile of questions we normally would at this point. So for that reason, we'll be back with them questions from questions, next week. And for the time being, the best thing to do if you have any questions would be to email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. If you would like to, I'm segueing into the intro and I feel rather self-conscious because I feel like I've just started talking and neither of you have said anything. So I'd like to open
We're nodding
the floor.
our heads.
I'd like to open the floor now to any tangent you'd like to insert at this point? Because I feel a little bit strange going directly into the outro.
I should have prepped some tangents. I guess I semi-answered a question that we often get earlier about the crossover development thing, so I feel like I've done my questions duty.
I'm glad that you've managed to find a way to make your peace with this time. Yeah. I'm struggling because of habits dying hard. Alex, would you like to just say something irrelevant?
I used up all my words.
Okay. Well, in that case, if you haven't used up all of your words, you can email us words to questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at Crate and Crowbar, which we do check honest, even though we almost always take our questions from email. So that's probably the better place to send them. YouTube, that's youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. And thank you as ever to our Patreon backers, whom, money and support make podcast go. I think that's how that works. If you would like to find the community on Discord, you can find them on the link on our website at crateandcrowbar.com. God, this feels weird. Why am I such a slave to the format? And then finally, we are on Twitter as individuals. My handle, as they say, is C Thurston. That's CTHURSTEN. I will perhaps tweet once every 2 to 3 months. Tom?
I am at Pentadact, PENT80ACT.
I'm going to point towards my website just in case you want to read the thing I'd done about Spelunky. My website is the same as my Twitter.
Oh,
rotational, rotational.co.uk/blog.
And your Twitter is rotational.co.uk/blog.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Excellent. Well, thank you.